All right. So, how went your blacksmith shop? Should be done, right? Should be done. Did everyone, at the very least, kind of get this project near conclusion? I want you to take some inspiration and some experience from this project. Spend some time and some reflection over the last, couple weeks, and think about how long it took you to make one building. Okay, it takes a significant amount of effort, doesn't it? Right? These are not little things. If you project yourself out there into the real world and look at these fantastic games that we're playing these days, like Fallout. Wait, Fallout came out today, or is that next week? I can't remember. The 10th, next week, yeah. And then Battlefront's the week after, right? Which is like, yeah. I can't wait for Star Wars Battlefront. It is the sole reason I'm buying an Xbox One here on the 17th. But if you look at those environments, they're incredibly detailed and very rich, right? The amount of labor that goes into the creation of these assets is quite high, okay? It does require some practice. It does require some intelligent design and thought. All things that I'm hoping to help you guys establish over the next couple weeks, okay? Our blacksmith shop in its current form ends this week. This is the last assignment that we're going to work on, or we're going to work with our blacksmith shop with, okay? And then we're going to move on to our final project. So if you've really hated your blacksmith shop, or as I've heard a couple people say before we started today, that you wish you could add more, okay? Didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, okay? The time with our blacksmith shop is going to come to a close pretty quickly. We have one more assignment that's going to include the blacksmith shop, and then we're going to transition into our final project, okay? Next week, well, we won't have class next week, so it'll be the week after. We're going to start working on our final project, okay? Now, we don't have a whole lot of time in this class to really think about our final project and to execute the battle plan for our final project. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you look at the academic calendar over the next basically calendar month, okay? Oops, this is May. There we go. All right. So Veterans Day next week. Clearly, we are not meeting next Wednesday afternoon. Okay, we will be meeting on the 18th. We will be having class on the 25th. We will be having class on the 25th. Okay. I hope everyone goes out and enjoys a nice Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving recess on Thursday. We will have content and stuff to do on the 25th. But if you don't count today, and you only count the classes that are in front of us, we have the 18th, the 25th, the 2nd, and the 9th. So we really only have 4 more classes after today, okay? Registration for the for the spring semester starts for the majority of students the week of Thanksgiving break, and then pretty much the entire campus is rocking and rolling for spring registration by the 30th, okay? So registration is right around the corner. However, what's most important for us is finals, okay? So here's the 9th. Finals begin, I believe, this week. This is finals. I want to say it's the 10th through the 16th. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's the 10th through the 16th. So that's final exams for us. So we only have 4 more classes after today, okay? So that really, what that translates into is that we only have 5 more weeks until we have to finish our final project. That's not a lot of time. How much time did I give you guys to work on your blacksmith shop? It's going to turn out to be, at the end of this, is going to be more like 3, right? Because we did the model, the textures, and now we're going to do the environment as well. So you're going to get right around almost 3 weeks, okay? 3 weeks and then maybe a little bit, considering what we're going to talk about 2 weeks from today, okay? For your final project, you're going to be adding 2 more buildings into the mix, okay? So you're going to create a small little village for your final project. There's a lot of work in front of you. The experience of building this black shop is important because now you know where to spend your time, the sequence, the steps that gets us to that final result, and probably most importantly, how we start to integrate this into our Unity game environment to give us the best results, okay? Today's conversation is going to help you create the environment for your world, for your level, for your final project, okay? It's the last big component in the creation of these levels. We've talked about models, we've talked about UVs, we've talked about textures, and now we have to physically create a level inside of Unity that will allow our players to run around and have fun and generally, make an interactive, engaging experience. So that's going to be today's focus. We're going to be looking at environments inside of Unity in preparation for our final project. If you go over to D2L real fast, let me just log in here. Here we go. And if we examine the content section under week 11, there we go. It might help if I activated it. I apologize. There we go. Now you can go check it out. So you can see that today's homework assignment, and basically the entirety of our time today is going to be talking about how to create terrains and levels and like trees and bushes and what have you in Unity. Okay, it's going to be pretty neat. We get to make some worlds today, which is going to be pretty rad. It's no longer about looking at the micro. Now we get to look at the bigger picture, the macro, and really look at how all the terrain tools inside of Unity will give us a pretty strong result. Your conclusion of your blacksmith assignment is going to be this terrain. So you're going to make an environment in Unity, place your blacksmith shop in that environment, and go from there. Okay, and then turn in your work at the end of this process. I've given you some examples of some pretty successful projects in the past. You can see that each one of these illustrations here are a nice little screen grab of an environment that exemplifies and kind of highlights the building that they constructed. The semester that, two of these examples came from a single semester of students. It's really kind of entertaining. We were in like a Lord of the Rings like rut that semester, and everything we did was like Lord of the Rings-esque, or all the student projects seemed to be like Lord of the Rings style. And it's hard to tell from the Reddit illustration on the left. I'll have to bring this game in. You can just barely see it. There's Isengard in the background. That's Isengard. There's a little blacksmith shop. So this is like, it was kind of strange. It was like Isengard and like Mordor all like mashed together into one, which was kind of fun. And this is, of course, Hobbiton, or portions of Hobbiton in the Shire. And then this one was just a really great project, a really great environment. I'll see if I can bring those three examples in as we walk closer to our final project so you can see the direction we're going in. Okay? So it's all about environments today. It's more than just the topology of our environment, right? The terrain itself. We're also going to be taking a look at how to make trees and bushes and all that jazz to flesh out the details. All right, so let me do this real fast. Here's my little blacksmith shop. I'm going to continue to use this as my example going forward. Yeah, so let's, I'm just going to go in and just very quickly delete all of my materials. I don't need them, and I'm just going to export out this layer, and I'm going to do it as a collada file. I love the collada file. It gives me just the best example, or the best result, excuse me. I'll call this Forge. Put it right on my desktop. All right, now I'm done with mode. Let's jump over into Unity and begin working today. Here we go. All right, I'm going to create a new project. It's going to be 3D, and let's just call this Pat's Forge. There we go. And the asset packages that I'm going to bring in are going to be the character package, and I'm going to bring character, and then we'll bring terrain assets here in a minute, but we'll do that after the fact. So let's just do characters. We'll create the project. You can see that my project directory is created on my desktop. Hopefully everyone's downloaded Unity by now, started to play around with it. Go check it out. There's no reason not to. It's 100% free. And like Modo, the more time that you have in application, the better. I would like, if you can, follow along. Everything that I'm going to be doing here is going to be built from stuff you can find in Unity. Like everything in the 3D world, the more physical hands-on experience we have with the tools, the more proficient we're going to be at those tools. Okay, I can give that to you. That's no problem. The only standard asset that I'm using at the moment are my character controllers, so that's no problem. Here, let me just do that. Give you all the standard assets before my brain walks away from it. I would highly, highly, highly suggest, and I went to the wrong folder, that you save these to your save these to your like a thumb drive. That way you can continue working with them. I wonder what they're doing next door. There we go. All right. So I've placed those in your Unity application folder, so they're not going to be on your desktop. Unity automatically places all the standard assets in a very defined location. On the Mac here, I've gone into my applications directory, and down at the bottom, of course, we have our Unity folder. If we look inside of it, there it is, standard assets, and you should see all of those packages in that folder now if you're following along. When you create a new project directory, this is the location that Unity is going to look when it loads in all the packages under that import assets option. So hopefully, are they there? Did they all get transferred correctly? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so now let's jump back over into Unity and start having some fun here. All right, I want to import my forge in real fast, just so that asset's ready to rock and roll. So I want to import in a new asset. Go to my desktop where my forge is. Bloop. And life is good. I'm going to get rid of the rig because I don't need it. Hit apply. And I don't have colliders on this thing yet, so I'm going to go into the model section of the inspector and just generate colliders. This is the only asset that I'm going to have in the scene, so I can afford to use the mesh collision that's found on each polygon with the mesh collider for my little simple level here. Last week we talked a lot about how to create simple colliders or mesh colliders for our environments. That's definitely something that I'd recommend that you do. Okay, so let's go ahead and start making it. Making a terrain in Unity is really, really easy. So one of the reasons why Unity became so popular is because of their simple terrain tools. Now, this is my little asterisk next to that for this. These are not the best terrain tools. In no way are they the best, okay? But they're okay terrain tools. They get us started. They get us started going down that pipeline, okay? They allow us to very quickly flush out some environments organically using a brush system, which is pretty neat. You can extend the terrain system in Unity to make some pretty amazing things, but I think given the default kind of vanilla tools, they're pretty cool. Let's go ahead and create one. It's in the game object menu, 3D object. There it is, terrain. When you add this terrain in here, it's really important that we look at the components that are initially created, okay? So here it is. There's my terrain. Whoa, it's mega big, okay? It is very, very large. But let's take a look at how this terrain object is being created over in the inspector, okay? So I have my terrain selected in my hierarchy. And the inspector is showing me, bubbling to the surface, some really important little components that we need to be aware of. Of course, at the very top there, you can see that's just called terrain. Don't ever have it be called terrain, okay? It's the most generic description of this item, and it will confuse you. What you want to do is give it a nice name, and then mirror that convention down here. So let's just call this, I don't know, forge environment. Okay. Now, so that's the name of the game object. Name of the game object. But look at its components. Of course, we have a transform component. We have this terrain component. This guy right here, this terrain component is really a whole series of tools, simple scripts that allow us to sculpt and make some pretty great terrains. We'll come back to that here in a minute. But really, the most important part in the data management of terrains is the terrain collider down there. If you look at the three channels that we have available to us, we have a material, which we'll talk about in a minute. We have terrain data, okay? And then we have enable tree colliders. That last one's not super important, but the middle one is the most important one, because what we have created is a data set, a whole series of ones and zeros, if you will. In actuality, what it is height information associated with the vertexes on this piece of geometry, okay? And I need to make sure that I manage this terrain data, okay? That I have a very solid understanding of its role inside of my larger game environment. If you have multiple terrains, okay, which you'll do, right? Maybe you have level 1 has its own terrain, level 2 has another, or maybe you're doing like 3 or 4 different terrain pieces in one level itself. You need to be able to manage the name of your terrain data, because they're all going to be named new terrain, okay? This is often the source of confusion for folks when they're working inside of a multiple game environment or multiple game level environment, okay? They don't name their terrain data. Unity is going to get confused. It's not going to hook in the right one if they're all named new terrain. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's just give this a new name here. Click, pause, click, and then we'll call this Forge Environment Terrain Data. Okay. You can shorten that if you wanted, maybe put TD for terrain data. But just know, make a physical connection between this object and this object here. Okay. It's going to update all that information inside the component channel box on the item. And now we're managing our media a little bit more cleanly. Okay. One of the reasons I like the terrain system inside of Unity is because we can swap out terrain data. Okay. We're not limited to just we're not limited by the initial terrain data if it gets corrupted, or if we want to change it, or if we want to have it interactively load at different functions or at different moments within the games. We can do that as well too. It gives us a tremendous degree of flexibility. All right, enough of this boring kind of technical talk here. Let's start going in and making a terrain. I generally find the grid in Unity kind of in my way. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so you have two. The hierarchy represents the elements that are in the game. Okay, go ahead and select it.
It's not showing up.
Interesting. Hit A for me.
I think it's because 2D boxes.
Oh, you made a 2D game. We need to make a 3D game.
Oh.
Yeah. So make a new project file, okay, and make a 3D game. Okay. So here's kind of Pat's little miniature trick of the day. Has anyone stumbled upon how you can turn off the grid? Because I find it gets in the way. Yeah. Okay, go to the top of the screen where it says File. Yeah, and then just do New Project. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Give it a good name. Looks like the 3D box is checked. It's on your desktop. Now you're able to get going. All right, I want to turn off my grid. It's hidden. It's a hidden feature. It's found in the Gizmos section up here inside of your Scene tab. And I'm just going to do Show Grid. Boop, bye-bye. And now we can see our environment with a little bit more understanding and clarity associated with it. Okay. So let's get making our terrains, okay? As one might imagine, in order to work on our terrains, you have to select the terrain game object in the hierarchy. And this part of our terrain are all our tools, okay? If you look very, very carefully at the icons for each one of these tools, you'll get a better understanding of their role in the creation of a terrain, okay? So the first one is going to allow us to pull up mountains, if you will. The second one is going to allow us to pull up and down mountains, okay? Or set the height, excuse me. This is set height. Let's raise and lower some terrain. Here we go. I'm just left-clicking and holding, and you can see what we're doing here. This is an additive environment. So if I leave my cursor in one spot, I can grow a mountain pretty quickly. Okay? This is additive. If I hold down the Shift key, I'll push all that terrain data back down. I'm going to turn off the influence of my directional light. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. Oops. No, not really. Let's turn it back on. And I think I'm just going to bring the intensity down quite a bit here. Oh yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay. Oops. So one thing that's really kind of neat about this system, and of course we're able to push up and pull down our mountains, but use these brushes. It'll allow you to very quickly get a much more organic feel to your shapes, okay? Naturally, we're not going to be making a star mountain, okay? I really can't say that I have an application for that specific brush type, but I do have an application for all of these guys, okay? Because now I can very quickly throw down some low-resolution detail, some high-frequency noise, and create small undulations inside of our terrain. The brush size and the opacity are going to determine the size of your paintbrush, and then the opacity is the intensity in which all these mountains are created. So if you wanted very, 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 very little mountains, turn the opacity down, and you can see that I've made just a small little change in height. So the opacity values are in every sense kind of like the intensity values of that brush, okay? And there are a bunch of them. They're pretty neat. Of course, if you don't like what you're doing, just hold down the Shift key, and you can easily erase it and bring it back, okay? So we're going to be sculpting our terrains inside of Unity. It's a tremendous amount of fun. It does require some work. I think the issues that I see people kind of falling into the most often is that they just use a soft brush and they do this, right? And that's the only type of sculpture they produce in there. Yeah?
Putting the blacksmith shop in there first, would that mess it up? Because I'm wondering about comparing the size of those landmarks.
Yes, we're going to get to that. And the answer to your question is we want to get the scale of our mountains is equally as important. Yeah, something that we need to explore as we go through this process. We're going to be looking at scale here in a minute. Yeah, so we'll get back to that for sure. All right, so the first tool is all about pushing everything up, right? Interactively, like a paintbrush. Cool. Awesome. The second tool, this is going to allow you to set a height, okay? And that height is determined by this slider in our inspector. Right now it's going to go to 120 units. So if I was to left click and hold, it looks like we're getting the same function until I hit 120, and then it plateaus. Maybe 120 is too extreme. Let's bring it down to like 20. Yeah, once it gets a height of 20, you can see that we can very quickly kind of plateau, okay? So that's set height. Holding down the Shift key in this particular situation isn't going to do a whole lot. This flatten button is interesting. This is how we're going to carve out like crevasses and riverbeds. Okay, let me hit undo for a second. Okay, so right now, if I was to go back to the push-pull tab, the first one, and hold down the Shift key, I'm not going to be able to, pull down a riverbed or a big valley. I'm only allowed to grow up. Okay, I'm only allowed to do additive sculpture at this point. That's because the height of our terrain is set to 0. Imagine that there is an invisible concrete floor underneath our terrain, okay? That's impenetrable. It's like steel. You can't push down past that concrete floor, but our terrain is sitting on top of it. If we raise our terrain, there'll be a gap in between that steel plate and our terrain, and we'll be able to push our polygons down into that area. Does that make sense? We can do that by going to the second tool, the set height, and flattening our environment to that defined distance, that defined height. So maybe I put this at like 50. Watch what happens to my terrain. flatten it out. See how the entire thing moved up? It moved up 50 units. So now I can go back to my first tool. Of course, I can go in, I can go up, but now I also can go down. Okay, so if you want to carve out little valleys and pits and riverbeds or roads, what have you, you need to raise your terrain, and then you'll be able to push down using the shift key. Okay. All right. This next one is just all about smoothing. You know, it's very, very easy, especially when working with some of these brushes like this, to get some bumpy kind of shapes. So the third one's all about smoothing it out. The opacity of our brush is going to give us the control that we're after. Yeah, better, or it's at the very least different. Using these different brush types while we smooth will give you some really great organic results. Yeah, pretty cool. Now we're smoothing it at a much kind of different property here. The results at the moment are not as visible, but it is doing it, which is kind of nice. All right, so we build our terrain with the first three tools. We push them up, we flatten them so we can push down, we smooth everything out, but it's still pretty basic. Let me just add some details in here. Try to think like a sculptor during this stage. You know, if you want to have a mountain range, that's awesome, okay? But mountain ranges very rarely have, you know, big gaps like that on the inside. Think like a sculptor. Let me go into the smooth world and smooth this down a little bit. It is way too spiky. That's an interesting shape. Maybe change the brush size a little bit here. Yeah, smooth out some of those craggy peaks. In my experience, the one thing that kind of shouts, this is computer-generated terrain that's badly sculpted, are these really sharp, faceted peaks here, right in there. Doesn't necessarily look like a mountain. Should turn on Bob Ross today on Twitch. Learn all about painting mountains. Did you guys see that on Twitch? I love Bob Ross, by the way. Oh man, it's so good. It is so good. I love Bob Ross. Bob Ross is my freaking hero. You guys know Bob Ross? John knows what I'm talking about. Paint some more happy trees, man. I love it. Love it. I think it's hilarious. I think it's hilarious that Twitch did that.
And he gets like 50,000 viewers.
Yeah, no, people are watching this. People are watching it because it's good entertainment, right? And what's really fascinating, and this is totally a tangent, for that I do apologize. There is a special type of relaxation technique that psychologists use, and I forget the official, clinical term for it, but it's basically listening to someone talk who has a very, ASMR, that's right. Listening to someone talk who has a very kind of nurturing, soothing voice. And there are a number of YouTube videos that the psychological community has kind of bookmarked of people who have that voice, right? That people just kind of go, oh. It's kind of relax listening to, right? And I remember reading an article about this not too long ago, and one of the videos was this lady who was just like reading random things. Like the video that I watched, she was like reading her grocery list, but in a very kind of soothing, nurturing way. And you kind of went, peanut butter, peanut butter, toilet paper. All right, rock and roll. And Bob Ross and the Joy of Painting was one of the videos that are on that list. And with the idea that you watch Bob Ross paint his little happy trees and his mountains and his clouds, and he just has a very relaxing, soothing voice, and his whole attitude is very calming. It's great. It's the painting that he does. The paintings that he does are quite good. The techniques are kind of cool. I remember watching Bob Ross when I was young. I really do. I credit Bob Ross to introducing me to the idea of layering. If you think about what Bob Ross does in his videos, is exactly what we do in Photoshop. You know, if you're an illustrator, you work from the background on one layer, then you work on another layer, creating the next foreground, layer, and then you keep building towards, right up next to the camera, right? It's amazing to me that Twitch said we're going to do a Bob Ross marathon. We're going to show every episode of The Joy of Painting nonstop. And people are watching it in droves, which just makes me smile. That a dude from the 70s with an afro is teaching this next generation how to paint. I love it. Love it. It's fantastic. Makes me smile. Bob Ross is my hero. There are a lot of rumors to his history.
I heard that he used to be a drill sergeant, but he quit because he didn't like yelling at people.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. He'd never made a single dime off The Joy of Painting either. Really? Yeah, he never made any money off of it. It was a vehicle to help sell his paints. Yeah, he made a bunch of money from the paints, right? Because at the beginning of each episode, he said, these are the paints that I'm going to use to make this painting. And at the bottom of the screen, he actually says, these are the colors, right? And then you were encouraged to go order these paints. If you wanted to follow along and kind of paint, with Bob during the episodes, you buy his paints, the exact same colors that he was using during the show, and then you could follow along, right? And he made a bunch of money off his paints and paint brushes. Yeah.
And the teaching.
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah, he went out and taught people a lot. I remember watching a PBS special on The Joy of Painting because it aired on PBS. It wasn't on a commercial network, and they initially thought that this wasn't going to work and no one would watch. And then it turned into kind of a global phenomenon in the mid-'70s when it first started airing. All right.
I've seen references of Bob Ross in anime.
Yeah, he's everywhere. He actually has had a significant impact on an entire generation. I know he made an impact with me. I watched a lot of PBS when I was growing up, and that was one of the shows that I really enjoyed watching.
Do you think it's a good learning resource as well, especially for like environmental art? Like even modern, you don't know where to start.
I think he's a good resource. If you look at his paintings, they're kind of all the same. That's the big problem with Bob Ross. They are very, very similar. They're very, very similar. They almost always have a mountain in the background. They almost always have some sort of stream or lake or pond in there at some point. They're almost always with like evergreen trees and pine trees. He kind of has, it's basically he paints Alaska every episode, There are some episodes where he steps outside of that, but as a whole, they're kind of similar. I think what we can learn a lot from Bob Ross isn't so much the technique, the color theory. I think he's a master of color. I thought that's, as you can probably get a sense, I've watched a lot of Bob Ross, and I think his use of color is quite amazing. What he's able to do in the reconstruction of mood and tone with color is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And very simple colors, too, in a very simple fashion. So I think that's my source of inspiration, because I think his from a 3D modeling perspective, his geometry is all kind of the same, but his textures are very different. If that makes any sense. Okay. I really didn't anticipate talking about Bob Ross today. When you're making environments and terrains and what have you, think like Mother Nature, okay? Try to imagine that these objects have been influenced by their surroundings. The wind, the water, earthquakes, they're all going to change the structure over millions and millions of years. If you think about it, just here in the United States, we have, what, two humongous mountain ranges. Can anyone name what those mountain ranges are? The Rockies and the Appalachians, right? Which one's older? You had a 50-50 shot at it, and you failed, John Hastings. Yeah, I know. It's the Appalachian, right? Yeah. I like it. Why are the Appalachians older visually? Nope, they're actually much smaller. They're more round, right? If you think about it, the Rockies are very angular. They're very high. They're very angular, very rough, kind of craggy looks. The Appalachians, they're big mountains, but they're rolling mountains, right? The Appalachians have been eroded and influenced by their environment and by the weathering for millions of years longer. Yeah, exactly. It's like a crayon in a box, right? The new ones have a sharp point. The one that's been used a lot are all rounded out, right? Try to imagine what type of mountain you're going to be sculpting and creating with these tools. You don't want to mix and match, okay? You don't want to have a big spiky peak next to some rolling hills. You want to make them all look like they're generally been influenced by the same crew, right? Same weathering effects. That's not to say that you can't have sharp points and peaks, but just what we don't want to have is something like this. And this is really the hallmark of bad sculpting. Okay, just like a spire by itself. Okay, this is no good. Okay, and believe it or not, people do that, right? People do that because here's the thing: when you start flying in, we fly in here real fast. From this perspective down here, you're not really going to tell all that much, right? You look up, it's just a big mountain, but it looks kind of silly, doesn't it, right? That looks a little bit more real, okay? There are differences in planes in here, but there's a natural kind of flow to it. Imagine that water has run down these mountains for millions upon millions of years. Well, where is this water going to go? It's got to go someplace. The forms that you create, the little valleys in here, the little channels, those are created from the actual water itself. So think about that. It's not something to be ignored. Like I may even go in here and smooth this out a little bit. Nice. I need to get a big afro. I think that'd help. A big perm afro, and then I'd be on my way. Okay, you guys ready to paint some happy trees? Because the terrain is just one part of it, okay? The first three tools are laser focused on just creating the geometry for our terrain, okay? But the next series of tools allow us to really go in and paint our terrain because we're going to want to place some textures in there too, okay? So the paintbrush icon, as one might imagine, is going to allow us to go in and start painting this bad boy. Now, in order for us to paint, we have to have some textures, okay? Because we're physically going to be painting some tiling textures down inside of our environment. So we need to have these textures already imported into the scene. Let's do this. I want to go in and just import the terrain standard asset package. So import package, and it's called environment now. I do believe this comes with a couple image maps, some tiling textures that we can use to kind of start learning how the tools and the systems work together in harmony. We're going to come back to that. This is one of the standard assets, the standard packages that comes with Unity. Here we go. All right, let's just import in all this stuff. There's a bunch of stuff in here. Some trees too, which are nice. But specifically, there's some textures in here that I want us to take a look at. Once the textures are installed and loaded into our project directory, they become exposed and available to the terrain painting system. So there's nothing more that we have to do once they're imported into the system. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Environment. Okay, looks like everything's in. So now I'll return to my terrain, my environment, and here's what we got to do. We're going to have a whole series of textures loaded into this area. But right now, we don't have any loaded in. So I'm going to choose Edit Textures, and I'll add one in. And we'll get this little popover. So we can select the texture. We're just going to bring open our asset browser. And now, let's see. Here we go. Maybe this cliff one. That might be kind of fun. Here we go. Here's grass, mud. Let's do these. Here we go. Now, let's see. Let's choose. Some of these have corresponding normal maps with them. Others don't. Well, we'll just use this grass hill for the moment. Okay. Now, check this out. The first one that you lay down is going to be flooded across the entire terrain. Okay? So maybe we should choose the dirt layer instead. And for this one, we'll use, I want to load in the muddy, comes with its own normal map. And the moment I hit add, watch what happens. Bloop. Okay? It floods it, and it tiles it across the entire terrain. Okay? But don't worry about it. It's only going to happen one time. Okay? It's only going to happen once. So pick the initial texture strategically. Okay? Things are starting to look all muddy here. This is not a great tiling texture because you can very, very easily see the repeating pattern of the texture across our terrain. Now, if you wanted to, you could absolutely edit the size of each one of these tiles. Notice at the bottom of my texture image here, I have a little blue line. That's telling me that this is the texture I'm currently working on. And if I return to Edit Textures and choose Edit Texture, we'll get that same familiar popover box. And now I can go in and change the size of this. Okay, maybe I want it to be 10 by 10. Oops, didn't hit the tab key. 10 by 10, so I actually made it smaller. Let's make it 1 or 5 by 5. Now it's really tiny. Maybe 40 by 40. Now they're really big. So we still have control over how big or how small each one of these muddy textures are, and that's just really comically big. No, this one does not tile it well. I agree. We'll just hit apply. But we're going to cover up most of it. When we're working with this terrain texture system, think in layers. Try to be like, try to build your texture set like the terrains in our world actually are, right? There's mud, there's rocks, there's sand, and maybe the top is grass. Paint in layers. I've just flooded down my mud layer. Now I want to be able to go in and interactively place where all my grass is going to be. So let's add another texture into the mix. So add textures, or edit textures, add texture. And this time, let's choose this grass and hit add. Notice that it doesn't flood it across the entire terrain. Now that I have two textures loaded in, if I select this grass one, it'll adopt the little blue line, and our brush system will come to the surface and allow us to interactively paint or interactively decide where I want to have my grass go. And I can paint in my grass. Okay? This is where painting with these brushes really becomes important because we can feather things quickly. Okay? Oops, a little too close. Because what we don't want to have is something like this, right? Where there's a hard transition line between where I've painted and where I haven't painted. Coming in and breaking it up a little bit goes a long, long way. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Better. Let's add another one into the mix because we can have as many of these as we want. I think there's another one in here that caught my eye. Yeah, this grassy rock. You can paint with this one for a bit. Yeah. Now, if you look carefully, just throwing in some rocks in there too. Maybe go back to my grass, start working with it. We can start blending all these textures together. Okay. This is where the artistry of texture painting comes in. It's not just in the flooding of the entire area with a single texture, but having 4 or 5 of these different images and blending between them to create a realistic transitions between surfaces. If you go out into our shoot, if you go out just right here in front of our building, we have patches of grass, but there's holes in that grass. You see dirt and rocks in the grass. We can very easily create that information just by going in and painting our terrain data with these really neat tools. Yeah, they're just images. They really are. They're just images. Okay, these are just the free ones. Huh? I really don't know about that. Give it a try.
All the images as well as substance files.
A material itself, yeah. Give it a go. I think if you look just based off the information that's in this little popover, you'll be able to put your albedo texture and a normal map in there. I'm not sure what more on top of that you can do with the system. All right. So that's how to work with the texture system. It's really quite easy. It's not too bad. Now the last thing that we want to do is that we want to go in and start adding some details, trees, rocks, bushes, all that jazz. And these two buttons allow us to do that pretty quickly. However, buyer beware. This is going to bog down your system. I think if Unity does one thing poorly, it does managing thousands upon thousands of trees pretty bad. So be careful, be strategic with the insertion of trees and rocks. Let's do it, right? Let's do trees, okay? Much like our texturing system, we have to load in a tree file in order for us to paint it on top of our geometry. So I'll go into Edit Trees, we'll add a tree, and you can see that it's asking for a game object. Well, we don't have anything loaded in, so if we hit the target, I'll open up our asset browser, and let's use this one. Conifer. I'll double click to add it in, hit add. Now it's sitting over there and available to us. There we go. I'm going to start clicking. Oh, yeah. You can see what we're getting. We're getting some trees. Please, 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 whatever you do not do this. Just wall-to-wall trees. That's not interesting. It doesn't look good. And even nature isn't like that. Really what you want to have is you want to vary the trees a little bit. They all look a little too uniform at the moment. So if you look at your tree options here, there's some randomizing that we can do. So let's do this too. We're going to randomize the tree height. And we'll also increase the color variation. And I can see that I have random tree rotation on. Yeah, now I'm getting some big ones and some small ones. And that's actually kind of what I want. If you hold down the Shift key, you'll take away trees. Let me just kind of restart all this. Because you want some big daddies and you want some small ones too. I'm making my trees too big. Now they're too small. It is. It gets slow. When you're flying around like this, you probably can. There are global preferences. You are, and that's something that you can fix. But you have to ask yourself, do you want to go through the trees? Okay. In some situations, yes, you want to go through the trees. Other situations, no, you don't want to go through the trees. That's an expensive collision operation because you'll physically have to do collision on the trunks of the trees, and that's a lot for the computer to manage. So depending on the preset, it's not a global operator. I wish they didn't actually have that option in there because it's very, very misleading. Let me throw my game character in here real fast. I'll go into Standard Assets, I'll grab my first person controller prefab. So I'm in the prefabs folder. And let me just grab this one. Throw this guy in. Let's play the game. Off and running. That one worked, which is good. Some prefabs don't come with colliders, and you can walk right through them. Bloop. We're getting there. Yeah, and that's why you want to be able to control it, right? Because at times you're just going to want to cruise through them. Because if you really think about it, if we were generating collision information for every single tree in some of these games, you'd never be able to walk through the environment. These trees are so closely packed in there, you won't do it. It's amazing if you watch people play games, they do like self-collision. Well, they'll walk around a tree, even though you can walk through it, you know? It's kind of interesting, actually.
Some bushes you can walk through.
Some you can't, yeah.
Or like World of Warcraft, how the terrain is just like, hey, can I walk up this? I don't know, let's try it.
Let's give it a go, right.
Whoops, I got stuck, I have to contact customer support. And they're like, use your Hearthstone. I'm like, I went all the way out your request, can't you just put me back in a different position? I'm like, nope, sorry, too bad.
So the cool thing about working in this tree system is that we can add multiple trees, and that's where the reality of the situation comes in, or the reality of the system. It's not just one tree that we're working with. We want to add a variety of trees. Now the trees that come with Unity don't necessarily work well together. Yeah, I mean, they're good tree models, but you probably wouldn't be seeing these trees living in the same environment. But you can see instantly as I start to lay it in, it's starting to feel a little bit more like a forest, right? Because it's not just one shape. It's not just one trunk profile or one series of leaf patterns. We now have a bunch of them. That's where the reality of the situation comes in. Oops. And as you can see, they will follow your terrain just quite perfectly. You can put trees in all the crevasses and stuff.
Wow, strength collision is so good, I can hop up the side of a mountain, even though it's fully vertical.
Let's play it now. Yeah. So it's not perfect in any sense, but we're getting there. It's starting to feel a little bit more like a forest now. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, is there a way to make this like a city or like a small village? Because I realize that because blacksmiths usually don't find that in the forest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can. It's up to you in your creative application of this project, right?
Can you put down buildings with the tree?
It's just, they're meshes. They're meshes. So
Like little cascade, little, things.
you could, yeah, you could. I don't think
Like
there's,
use the foliage tool,
yeah. I think you certainly could. I'm not, that's, the answer to that question is it best, yeah, give it a try. Is it best for your game? Yeah. If you're just trying to throw down organic detail quickly, there's nothing stopping you. What defines a tree is the mesh object that you load into that parameter. That mesh can be anything, okay? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. They do. If you let's take a look at that, Josh, because that's a really interesting question. If you look very carefully here, let's see if we can see it. Now I'm basically looking at the horizon line, and there is a draw distance. My draw distance may be of such that it's not giving me the transition that I'm after. This last icon in our tools, this is our settings. Let's see. Yeah, here's the detail distance. Let's put that detail distance pretty small. And now let's play the game. So I'm hoping that the trees, you'll see a transition. Nope. Oh, I did the wrong one. I did detail distance. I meant to do tree distance. Let's put that at a very small value. Oh, too small. And now, if we watch the trees, especially the ones that are off in the horizon, we may see them go from a 2D tree to a 3D tree. Yeah. Looks like in this version of Unity, they're getting quite good at it, which is nice, because it used to be very, very apparent. Because it'd be like a 2D tree, and then all of a sudden it would like morph into like a 3D tree. So it looks like they're getting better at it, which is pretty great. Okay. Finally, let's talk about these detail meshes, and these are like plants, flowers, grass, things like that. This is really the area that you want to be careful in. It allows you to create some pretty organic detail. Let's do it. Let's add in some grass textures. The grass usually is the one that turns into the problem itself. Okay, so let's load in an asset. Let's do. I saw one. Let's do this one. Okay. There we go. Okay. So if we take a look at, ooh, a little too close. Yeah, so now we can paint in grass. Okay, now this is absolutely a buyer beware moment. Because watch what happens to my world. It now starts to turn into an ocean of slowly waving grass, which is kind of odd. Yeah, also your frame rate goes down dramatically. The performance of your game drops significantly, okay? And it doesn't really necessarily look real either. So what I would suggest that you do with grass is use it sparingly, okay? And definitely use these different paint brushes to give you that organic look. Yep. You can go in and change how the grass behaves in your settings. Let's see. Let's see, it's the wind. I want to turn down the speed of the wind so everything's not flowing so crazy. You can also tint your grass. That's why some blades of grass are getting tinted to brown, which I'm never a big super fan of, but let's go with that. Play our game, see what happens. Yeah, much better. And now, a little too sparse on the grass. They're moving. It's still the wrong color. I think the grass is probably the weakest point. Well, it all kind of depends on the texture too, because really what you're taking here in the grass is you're taking a two-dimensional image and you're placing it down as if it's on like a plane, and the computer's just kind of bending it like this, that two-dimensional image. So if you had a really great grass texture, that may help kind of round out the illusion that you're after. You can also make detailed meshes. These are going to be like rocks and trees and stuff, or like rocks and bushes. Now, I'm not sure if I have any here, but if you found like a rock or something, you could definitely start painting rocks down, or shrubs and what have you. That'd be cool. All right. Okay. Questions so far. I need to remove some trees. There we go, because I want to show you guys something. Awesome. I'm just going to go in and remove the grass too. The other thing that I don't like about the grass is that it's not going to show up. See how in the OpenGL viewport?
Oh, you can change that with the detail list.
Yeah, but you kind of don't want to, right?
Because that affects your in-game.
Yeah, and it slams your performance, right? Because at this level, I don't want to be having all my grass be drawn. It kills your performance. Oops.
Here's the spots where your grass is. You're not going to draw it until your game engine, but that would be like just like red spots or
Yeah.
just like a texture trading a little bit so you can see you're in the details tool. Oh, here's where your details are.
I wish that I think that there's some engineering and some love the guys down at Unity could do for grass. they would probably tell you that this is not the implementation that they had envisioned. Okay.
Unreal does a pretty good job.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, these are not the best terrain tools. They're good terrain tools. There are other systems that have stronger tool sets. Okay. All right, the last thing that I wanted to show you guys is, and I have to load in, let's see, in this version of Unity, is water. Okay. Water is a little bit of a challenge, okay, because water is basically a grand illusion. Do not expect to have the exact same water effects that you see in like Skyrim, okay? Those water effects, or what you see in like Grand Theft Auto 5, those solutions cost in the millions of dollars, okay? Those are extensions to their game engine that create the most amazing fluid dynamics in engine itself. Unity out of the box with the default tools, it's not going to be that cool, all right? Yeah.
Like, how many, what's the word I'm looking for? Software do you think it took to create that kind of effect? Was it all in one software that they did that?
For Grand Theft Auto 5?
The water, yeah.
I really couldn't tell you. I really don't know. But I know that these larger game studios, either they purchase or license, dedicate, or they write their own libraries to generate the illusions that you see. We don't have that level of first-party support, so come with it with a grain of salt. Don't keep your expectations for water very, very low, because the default support for water is very, very low. Okay, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm in the water section of my environment presets, and I'm in the prefabs folder, and let's just do Water Pro Daytime. I'm going to drag that in. There we go. And as you can see, it is literally, a disk. It is literally just a big, there we go, water. Yeah, like I said, it is not anything too fancy here. Um,
Oh no, just be flat.
it is a flat plane that's got an animated texture on it. You look very carefully, you can see a little shimmer on the water. It's not horrible. It's not the worst water I've seen, but don't expect to see like splashes, and don't expect to see like a trail. I can walk right through it. Yeah, yeah. I can walk right through it, and then I can walk right up it. Woo. Okay, it is literally a plane. That's all it is.
I would put light on it. Yeah, woohoo, now I'm gonna walk down water.
But like I said, like, what if it doesn't touch the side? Would it stick that way?
Yeah, it's just a piece of geometry. So if there's nothing for it to sit in, I mean, it literally is just a disk. If you look at it, hit the move tool, it is just a disk. Just a disk. I could even put my water in my trees if I wanted to.
Oh, you already yourself below.
Now I flooded my world. Get to higher ground. So that's water. That's water. Very, very simple. Okay, I'm going to destroy my model here real fast. I've gone through and I've done a lot of work, and I'm going to do this intentionally to show you an important stage, an important thought when designing terrains, and that has everything to do with scale, size, okay? I want to put my little house in here, my little forge, and let's get a good understanding of how big the default terrain is, okay? So let's do it. Now my first person controller prefab is somewhere, let's get rid of the water. Okay, don't need the water anymore. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay, and let me go grab my forge, throw it in. Okay. It's a little small. All right, let's play the game. See what we get. See if we're at the approximate scale height. Then I think I'm pretty darn near close. Yeah, I'm pretty darn near close. I'm happy with that. So there's my house, right? Looking pretty good. Life is good for me. Now let's go into our scene view and look how big my terrain is. So remember, where my transformer handles are is my house, okay? Yeah. What can you tell me about the default terrain size in Unity? It's pretty big. In all honesty, I believe it used to be bigger, okay? We can change, the place where we change the size of our terrains is in our settings on our environment itself. So if I go into the little gear icon, here it is, the terrain width and height. Width, height, okay? Or width and length, excuse me. The defaults for this used to be 2,000 units by 2,000 units. Those are like mega, those are like Skyrim size environments, right? They're just massive. But you can change this. However, you want to change this before you really start doing your sculpting, and let me show you why. Right now it's at 500 by 500. All of our terrain data is associated with this height and length. So if I half it, let's do 250 by 250. You can see that the features have been squished. So you want to set the terrain size before you go in and you change. Look, all the trees are closer to each other now. Okay, so you want to dial in and get all of your sizes for your terrains done pretty quickly. You know, this is like the first thing to do. Get your house in there, start establishing the size of your environment, because once you start sculpting, it's kind of a point of no return. Making any changes to the size of your environment after you sculpt is going to force you to resculpt.
Would you say you would have to build that entire landscape with the stuff that you need to do it, or can you just do what you're doing right now and put it on the corner?
Well, this is the illusion that we're going to have to create, right? As long as there's some sort of barrier, either a physical barrier or a visual barrier that stops the gamer from seeing the kind of a developed part of your level, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, there's nothing to say that you can't go in and be like, okay, I do not want my gamer to go over here. Let's just do like set height. It's like, I don't want my gamer to go right here. That's it. That's as far as that person's going.
Or you just put an invisible wall and piss them off.
Or you can put an invisible wall and really, really make them grumpy. Yeah, it's the most beautiful environment that you can't go to.
Oh, I hate that. It's like, hey, why you put it there to begin with? You know, make the outside of your environment be like either A, boring, so you don't want to go there to begin with, or B, put something in a way so it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to go there. Like, you know, I don't know. Okay. Also, I found out. I just created Halo level water, like original Halo level water.
Awesome.
Hey, and it's gonna fall forever.
All right, so there's my house. Then over here, there's my big wall that I made. So it's all an illusion, this thing, right? It's all an illusion. It's all smoke and mirrors. We're the tricksters. It's a great example of where tree colliders kind of get in the way. I got a pretty dense forest, and I'm registering a lot of collision on these trees that's preventing me from navigating where I want to go. Ta-da! Okay. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Questions on what we've talked about so far? Yeah.
But I just noticed that there's footsteps sound.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's on my computer, but you can do that. It comes with first-person character controller.
Like, how can you edit that? Like, how would that look like?
So
Can you put it, or should I say, can you put your own audio?
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. These are just sound effects. Okay. So if you had your own jump sound effects, just put it in that jump spot. Boop, you're on your way. Yeah. So here's all the audio files. I think I have my sound effect turned off at the moment.
Like depending on, can you set that to like depending on what they're watching on?
I would imagine you can. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the cool thing about Unity, in all game engines for that matter, is that everything is programmable, right? We can change the parameters of any of these components pretty quickly with with the creation of a couple scripts that analyzes the surface that we're walking on, for example, and using the result of that question to swap out the appropriate sound effect. We're going to get into that in 426, so I don't want you to think too hard about that right now. But if you want to start looking at the programming side of this, I definitely encourage you to do that. The more experience you have with scripting and programming, the better. It really is. It is the common language of all video game artists, programming. Everyone on a video game crew is going to have a little or needs to have a little bit of exposure to programming and understand the language, how it's put together, its role inside the larger production pipeline. Yeah, that is the common denominator in video game. We'll do a little bit of scripting in here at the end of the semester when we start doing like GUIs, because you're going to make like a start menu for your game, for your final project, a little start menu. So we'll do a little bit of scripting, but not a whole lot. 426, we do a whole lot in 426. Okay. One thing to play around with, this is actually kind of cool. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience in this, but you can actually make your own trees. Unity has licensed a really cool chunk of technology called Speed Tree, and it allows you to make your own tree based off of these really kind of cool little rules. I've only done it once or twice, but I encourage you to go in and explore it. It's under this tree option. So 3D object, tree. There we go. And it's really neat, because what you'll be able to do is create a whole hierarchy of different branches, trees, leaf patterns, and what have you, to create a really kind of custom looking tree. So experiment with it. There it is. There's the tree that I just created. Changing the rules in here, you can see will change how the tree is created. Okay? So you don't have to use ground offset. That's just going to raise and lower it. You don't have to use an existing tree model to make your own trees. You can make them right here in Unity. To do so, if I wanted to add, so it's a hierarchy, right? So this is the trunk, this is the tree root, this is the trunk, okay? Or the branch, excuse me. And let's see. Like I said, I've only done this once or twice, so I'm not a master at it in any sense. Let's add like a new branch. Yeah, there we go. New branch. And then you can change the shape of it down here. The length of that branch. The radius, the thickness of that branch. Crinkles. Good times. Maybe I want some other branches to go from there. Oops, that's not how I thought it worked. Never mind. Let's trash that. Put leaves in there. Of course, they don't have to put the leaf texture on there. But they are drag and drop nodes. So let's do this. I gotta remember how to. There's the spline that's affecting the tree. There's a way. Rotate, let's scale the branch or freehand. Draw your own branch. That's kind of cool. So you can have fun with it. I don't have a tremendous amount of experience in this, but it's pretty neat. There we go. That's what I want to do. I was like, I want to move my branch. That's all I want. So if you wanted to make your own like super specific custom tree, this would be the way to do it. I've had aspirations for many years to make a 3D model of our campus. I actually started the process, and then I got stopped by our administration because they were worried that I'd make a video game of our model, or a video game model of our campus that people would use to, like, I don't know, like plant bombs or something in our campus, which is the most ridiculous idea ever, right?
This one guy got arrested for building like a Counter-Strike map in his high school or something.
Yeah, it's the silliest thing ever, right? Especially on an open public campus. What information would this model have that you couldn't already get by, I don't know, walking around our campus? I told the captain of our police department that, and he looked at me kind of in a grumpy, stern face and said, "You're not making a model of our campus." And I went, "Okay, fine." And then I made one anyways. Yeah, I started to do it. I basically said, "Fine, I don't need your help." And let me tell you, the best and the fastest way to get a lot of strange looks is to walk around the buildings of our campus with a tape measure, because that's what I was doing. I was measuring the exterior footprint of both Cosmo and the tech building over here, and I got stopped by almost every single instructor that I ran across because they all were curious what I was doing. They were doing their job, right? Because at this point in time, I was relatively new to this campus. No one really knew me. So there was this unfamiliar face measuring the walls of our campus, and yeah. Once I explained what they're doing, everyone got really excited. Like, "Oh, sweet, can I help?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, you can. Hold this. Hold this while I hold my tape measure while I go run it out." Anyways, okay. Questions on what we've talked about so far? Yes? No? Good? Getting there? We're just making terrains this week. Now, I've given you guys some extra goodies. Okay? Because the terrain assets that come with Unity are pretty basic, right? The speed tree stuff is really neat, but it takes some effort to make something that's pretty good. Often the fastest way to get really high quality results is to use something that's preset, and thus enter the role of the goodies that I have given you inside of the Week 11 bundle of stuff. So Terrain Toolkit, this is a package. If you download it real fast, it's a package full of 3D models. Let's unzip it. So inside the folder, here's the Unity package, okay? You'll need to import this into your game, and let's just do it real fast. Let's jump over into Unity, and inside my project tab, I'll right-click, import new package, and we'll choose custom package to choose the package that's sitting on my desktop. There it is. Now this is actually a free library of assets that the guys and gals down at Unity have given us. So you're free to use it. Let's import them in. There's a lot of stuff in here. Or there used to be a lot of stuff. Oh, wait, no, this is something totally different. However, this is also very cool. I gave you guys the wrong one. But actually, this is neat. This is actually pretty cool, too. This is even better than what I have. Go ahead, update the API. This is a script, the Terrain Toolkit. So there's terrain assets, which I'll show you how to find. And there's the Terrain Toolkit, which is a script library. So here's my environment. It looks kind of silly at the moment, right? And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in with a very, very big brush. It's very dark. And I'm just going to paint green everywhere, just to make it a little easier to see. That muddy brown texture is kind of difficult. Okay, there we go. All right. So what we have here is a very, very basic, boring mountain range system, right? What we could use is this Terrain Toolkit. Now, the Terrain Toolkit is a series of scripts, okay? And yeah. So if I remember, you drag and drop this script onto your environment. Let's see, yes. And what we get down here at the bottom is the ability for the computer to go in and to procedurally create a terrain for us, okay? Using a whole series of rules as the guide for this process. It's pretty neat. So we can create, we can erode an existing structure, we can texturize a whole, that'll come, let's just create something here real fast. And so you have a whole different series of algorithms down here. And the feature type, we'll have it be not as round, and we'll generate it. So it's generating the height map for me. Let's see what we get. Whoa, that's crazy. So let's do fractal. Interesting. Okay, so maybe some of these values need to be reduced. Yeah, blend is probably the one we want for fractal. Yeah, now it's bringing it down a little bit. So a little bit more realistic. Let's see what Perlin does. Oops. Let's do rough planes. Yeah. Interesting, right? So these are options. These are options to generate terrains for us, okay? Procedurally based off a whole series of rules. What's smooth? I'm just curious what smooth. It's probably just going to be, just smooths everything out. Normalize. That made everything much bigger, so let's go back in time. Let's go into rough mountains on fractal, see what we get. Yeah, I like the other one better. Okay, cool. So what's neat about this is that you can create terrain, but you can also erode terrain as well. So let's do fast, harsh erosion. See what happens. Yeah, in this one, it didn't get a whole lot. But in others, it creates this really nice weathering effect on everything. It's pretty cool. Let's do hydraulic. Let's do heavy rainfall on hard rock. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, kind of rounds everything out a little bit for mine, at the very least. Play around with this. This is a great way to organically infuse some detail into your terrain and make something that's not man-made. It's more, you know, kind of you know, computer-made, and that may give you a more compelling result. It's an option. That's all I'm trying to say. There's just options out there. Okay. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Now, what's also kind of neat about this is this texture bit. This texture bit's actually kind of cool. Right now, I have 2 textures or 3 textures loaded in, okay? And we get to basically tell the computer when we want, at what height we want all these textures to begin and end. Now, this absolutely takes some dialing in. Let's see, these are cliff textures, cliff starts. We get to define when that cliff starts, when it ends, the transition between those. Let's apply these procedures. Yeah, so check it out. I got them backwards at the moment. And I need to dial in the values, but look, it's only adding the grass texture at specific slope values and height values inside of my terrain. So let's go ahead and change that. So if you keep monkeying around with these, yeah, so now I got them swapped at the moment. Let's do this. Can I swap them? No. Cool, a little different. Let's make the slope pretty big. Yeah, okay, better, right? I really like the texture component to this because it allows, it only places textures in areas where they naturally would be. I have my image wells kind of selected incorrectly at the moment. Let's see. Let's change. I think there's actually a cliff texture in here. Yeah, there we go. So I can swap out the textures real fast. Life is good. Maybe this one will be that one. Yeah, and now we're creating the variation that we're after, which is pretty neat. Okay, pretty neat. Play around with this. Play around with this. Okay. Now, originally where I was going, on top of the terrain toolkit, we also have terrain assets that you can find online for free. Now, I'm opening up Pandora's box here. And I'm intentionally opening up Pandora's box because we can't ignore this feature of the Unity ecosystem. It's called the Asset Store. And the Asset Store is an environment that we can go to physically buy 3D models, textures, animations, and game objects that we can put in our games. Okay? You really don't have to make anything, and that's the whole idea. Let me show you the Asset Store. And I bring this to the surface because there are a number of really great free terrain elements that you can buy or that you can download from the Asset Store itself. So if you go to the... Yeah, exactly. So there it is right there. It's under the window. Hold on menu. Welcome to the Asset Store. There's a lot of really great. Oh, the birthday bonanza sale. Awesome. What's in here? Anything fun? Anything that I need to have that I will never use? Yeah. So it's literally everything. Everything from cameras to character controllers, models. It's everything. It's a great resource. Here we go. If you ever wanted to make a medieval world, there it is. Here's a whole bunch of models. Now, if you download any of these and put them in your game for a final project, I'm going to know. I'm going to know magically. I'm going to know. Yeah, so don't try to pull the wool over my eyes and say, Pat, I made that awesome blacksmith shop that looks exactly like the blacksmith shop on the Asset Store, right?
I made my homework.
Right, yeah. I was inspired by it, Pat. No, yeah.
They stole mine.
Right, yeah. I'm an Asset Store contributor. So please don't buy something from the Asset Store and put it in your final project. That's going to make me kind of grumpy, okay? And that's really not what we're here to do, okay? It's really easy to go out and spend, in this case, $40 and have your final project done for you, okay? But that's not what you're here to do, right? You're here to learn how to do this process. So you're really kind of selling yourself short. Don't auction off your education for $40, okay? However, it is cheaper than tuition. Thank you for making my whole existence here seem not important. But they are good assets, actually. The good stuff. There's like a little micro economy inside the Asset Store these days. People are making a lot of money off the assets that they put up here. So if you get really good at this process, there's nothing that's stopping you from taking your blacksmith shop. If you think it's a cool design, publishing it to the Asset Store and making some cash off of it. You never know. Could buy a cup of coffee every day. I know that the models aren't as hot. The models aren't the big money makers. It's the scripting and the components, the interactive components that are really the big thing here. And it requires a tremendous amount of expertise and knowledge, like AI pathfinding. I don't know anything about AI pathfinding, yet there's an entire component that I could buy for $50 on the Asset Store that'll get my AI to do, my AI characters to walk exactly where I want them to walk, okay? That's worth $50 for me. I don't need to buy any of the art assets because I can make them myself, although I do buy rocks. I have bought rocks on the Asset Store a couple times because I refuse to make rocks. What is the top paid thing? I'm curious now. Village exteriors. Oh, I wonder if I may only be looking at what's going on inside the birthday bonanza sale. Yeah, fragmented objects is the top paid. Oh yeah, cool. Destruction system. That's kind of neat. So for $15, fragmented objects. Coolio. That's neat. There's a lot of really great technology. This is one of the reasons why Unity is so popular, is because of the asset store. It's an extension to everything that we need, basically, for our world. For what we're doing, there is, if we do a search for terrain assets, and this is it, terrain assets. It's free. This used to come with Unity, and when they created the asset store, they kind of shifted it up into the asset store. It's absolutely free. There are probably a good 100 models in this bundle. Every type of tree, grass that you'd want, it's in here. There's a lot. So check it out. It's really great. It's free. It does force you to make a user account, and then when you download it, you hit the little download button, it downloads it into your project directory, which is pretty cool, okay? And you'll be able to start working within minutes of you downloading it, from the asset store, okay? So I would encourage you to snag this guy. It's absolutely free. Don't buy anything else. If I catch you buying stuff, I'm not gonna like you, okay? I'll do something bad to you. I'll figure it out. I'll fail you from this class. No, I won't fail you. But use these assets. They're free. There's no reason you shouldn't use them. And they're really good trees. They have really good rocks in there. It's all those detail meshes that you'll want to use to start populating your environment. Okay? Questions on what we've talked about? The only asset that I'm allowing you to use in the asset store is this terrain assets. If I see a really cool wine barrel that you downloaded from the asset store, no likey, or if you buy a crate.
Has that happened before?
It hasn't happened before, actually. Everyone has been pretty great. So if I see any shanty town bushes, okay, the bushes you can do, the brush vegetation you can do. But if I see what other stuff is in here?
Like something big.
Oh, or something from the blacksmith demo.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh my God, this is perfect. Yeah.
What is the top grossing one? The nature package. This is how much people hate making trees, right? Because for $50, I get 32 trees and bushes. $50 well spent, in my opinion. Okay, so yeah. Okay, questions on how to work with terrains instead of Unity in the whole pipeline and process. All right, let's take a break. Been yakking for 2 hours. Let's take a break. Okay, guys.